In his first term in office, India's Prime Minister accused the country's rich of a vulgar display of wealth that insulted the poor. Was he right, and did anyone listen? Are the haves turning their back on the have-nots? I'm the outsider. This is our motion tonight. India is mean. Speaking for the motion, Deval Sangvi, former investment banker, he now works on sustaining non-profit organisations that have impacted more than 1 million lives. And with him, Luis Miranda, he heads the advisory board for the Centre for Civil Society and is involved in a number of projects related to education and healthcare. Against the motion, Ganesh Natarajan, Vice Chairman and CEO of a global technology company. He's also leading a skills transformation initiative across Asia. Also against the motion, Ronnie Screwvala, who built a media and entertainment empire. Not content with that, he also set up a foundation which has adopted over 200 villages here in the state of Maharashtra. Ladies and gentlemen, that's our panel. So, Deval Sangvi, I'm going to ask you, first of all, for your top 3 points in support of the motion, please.
Sure. So 40% of India's wealth today is controlled by the top 5% of our country. While liberalization has enabled phenomenal growth, it has only doubled the inequality of wealth between India's rich and poor, making us the worst performer of all emerging economies. Estimates range 53% of our population currently live in poverty today. While in no way are the rich responsible for such travesties, they need to take more responsibility in contributing to the social development of our country as opposed to looking at their personal wealth creation. The father of our country, Mahatma Gandhi, believed industrialists should regard themselves as trustees of wealth and should use it not just for their own benefit, but more importantly for social good. And looking at our appalling indicators, India has the highest rate of malnutrition, farmer suicides, and child marriages. The rich need to take on more responsibility, take on more action, and need to stop being mean. Historically, we've had a rich tradition of giving, including the Tatas, which in more recent times have been continued with the Nilakanis, the Perumal's, and the Premjis. Unfortunately, these names and indications are still anomalies, and 127,000 millionaires and billionaires that reside in our country need to do more. By using expertise and networks beyond funds, India's rich need to make the government more accountable to provide quality social services instead of building schools and hospitals in their name. In March of this year, Shiv Nadar spoke about how when India had just opened up, we were not confident about our wealth, but now Indians are confidently wealthy. We are the home to the world's fastest growing H&I population, therefore wealth is here to stay, and the rich need to stop being mean. To quote Rohini Nilakani, we need the smartest minds, the warmest hearts, and the deepest pockets to come together and bring about lasting change.
Deval Sangvi, thank you very much indeed. I don't want to overburden our audience with figures, but according to a survey by the Bain consultancy, I'm sure you're familiar with them, the amount of charitable giving among the wealthy has almost tripled in the last 5 years. That's not mean, is it?
Not mean at all, but when I see 1,000 children dying every single day in our country because of lack of toilets...
Yeah, but those people who are giving are not responsible for that, are they?
Not the ones that are giving, it's the ones that are not forcing the government, that are not taking into account...
But more people are giving, and more people are giving more. Under 30, high net worth individuals make up the group whose rate of giving is increasing the fastest.
I think indicators are great right now, and I think we've at Dasra and the Indian Philanthropy Forum, which we launched in conjunction with Bain & Company, have been successful in really sparring a different breed of philanthropist.
So these aren't isolated cases, are they?
These are cases that are
a new wave. I mean, people we've spoken to who head charities are saying it's no longer a question, should we give? It's how we give that people are asking. This is a big turnaround in a short time, given that people have only had their wealth for what? Anywhere between 5 and 15 years. It's new wealth in this country, isn't it?
It definitely is. Yet the impact, again, that we have on our shoulders is 800 million people that don't have access to toilets. It's the fact that 600,000 children in our BMC school system in 5th standard cannot still write a paragraph. We can't talk about what has happened.
All you're saying is that there's a long way to go.
All I'm saying
is... the need is great. You're not saying that people are not giving, because they are giving, aren't they?
In an impactful way, there's still a long way to go. And I also believe that the percentages of giving, as if you compare India to even Pakistan and Bangladesh, are significantly lower, not even looking at the 9% giving in America.
But the fact is that a lot of the giving is unrecorded. You don't know necessarily who's giving what to whom. There's enormous amounts of gold that are being given to temples, for instance. Nobody knows exactly how much each person is giving, but it's a huge movement, isn't it?
It's a great movement. No one also knows how much these temples are doing for society.
You told the industrialists, well, I had different figures. You told the industrialists to do more. Industrialists are doing the most important thing of all. They're creating jobs for people. Millions of jobs. They need to create more than 12 million new jobs every year. They need money to do that. They need assets to do that.
Couldn't agree more.
This is a huge responsibility.
I don't think it's an either-or situation. I think you need to do both. And I think to sustain the GDP that clearly we're not able to sustain today, it's because we haven't invested in healthcare, in toilets, in infrastructure. Those are long-term development goals that the country needs to make, and the HNIs have the power and expertise and networks.
High net worth individuals, for those who don't know the term.
Excuse me. High net worth individuals have the ability to push this through.
Deval Sangvi, thank you very much indeed. Ganesh Natarajan, your top 3 points against the motion, please.
Tim, let me start with the point you made, which is the Bain Corporate Philanthropy Report. And it is a fact that over the last 5 years, there's been almost a quadrupling or a 5 times improvement in corporate spending. The second point I'd like to make is there's also a World Bank report, which we talked about in one of the Harvard Business School conferences in the city of Mumbai, which talks about close to 7.5 billion, which is being spent both visibly as corporate social responsibility and by high net worth individuals in their own personal capacity. I just want to paint a picture for you. I mean, if you come to the campus that we run, for instance, in Pune, which is about 4,000 people, and you walk outside the campus, you'll see a community called Chandan Nagar where everything from education to healthcare, everything is taken care of by employees of our organization. They also do affirmative action programs, they educate young people, make sure they get jobs. And the reason I'm mentioning this is, there was a time when it was just payroll giving, where somebody said, oh, let me write a portion of my check and give it to a charity which could do. But today we are encouraging our young people, and I come from an industry which employs today close to 3 million people directly, and another 7 million people indirectly as people who contribute to the IT industry. But we're encouraging them and we're measuring them by how much they're giving back to society, by physical activity, educating people, really working on healthcare, areas like that. Another point I'd like to make is, if you look at the entire corporate India, there was a time when we did not believe in affirmative action. We said our only responsibility was to the shareholder. But today there's a very strong belief that the stakeholders in our society are, of course, the community that we serve, also our shareholders, also our customers. And which is why you see, for instance, I come from the CII, the Confederation of Indian Industry. We have a very vibrant affirmative action program. We were taking underprivileged people, not only from caste and other criteria, but also underprivileged from the affordability point of view, giving free education, giving free skills. I agree with what you said. I think there's a very long way to go. But the point I'm making is a lot is being done. And in fact, if you look at our industry, the kind of jobs we are creating, Tim, you mentioned that. I mean, close to 7 million will become 14 million. Young women, there are 32% women employed.
Come to a close, please.
And 20% are actually sole breadwinners. A lot being done, a lot more to go.
Ganesh Natarajan, thank you very much indeed. You talked about corporates doing more. Give India, the charity portal, reported disappointing results between 2010 and 2011. Corporate funds, it said, had fallen well below 5% of the total channeled, compared to 20 to 30% in previous years. They're actually giving less than they used to.
See, that's the point I was making, Tim, that today, if you look at it, a lot of us are donating in our individual capacity as well, which is why you see the difference.
How do we know that?
Well, I mean, if you look at the World Bank study and the Bain study, 1.5 billion versus 7.5, there are a tremendous amount of, in fact, there are almost 3 times more foundations that have been set up by individuals.
But relative to the rest of the world, I want to cite a report that was done by the Charities Aid Foundation in 2010. India came out as 134th in the League of Generous Nations. You proud of that?
No, not at all. Absolutely. I think we must...
Algeria is more generous. Nicaragua is more generous.
I'll have to understand the metrics.
Chad,
I'll have to understand the metrics of Algeria for that.
Well, here's the interesting thing, because it's not just the amount that you've given, but it's also about whether you did anything for a stranger in the last month before the report was compiled, and whether you gave up some time for anybody. So it's not just whether you dug deep into your pocket. And on those initiatives, India scored very badly. Why?
I'm surprised at that, and that's the point I was making. And that today it's
What
much
is it,
more
disaster fatigue, poverty fatigue?
No. It's much more than payroll giving. It's giving time, encouraging young people who are well off to actually contribute to society. And I think a lot more of that is happening in the last couple of years than we've ever seen before. Many young people
A lot more money is being stashed outside the country than ever before. $1.5 trillion Indians are stashing outside the country. How generous is that?
Well, that's being very generous to themselves, I agree.
Exactly.
But the point I'm making
Well,
is...
you're saying India is not mean. Stashing $1.5 trillion outside the country is pretty mean, isn't it?
I agree with you, but the point is, are we doing enough for people, and is it increasing?
Well, how can it be enough when $1.5 trillion is being stashed outside the country?
That's an argument we can continue to have, but I'm saying that there's much more being done for young people underprivileged than has ever happened in the past, and I think it'll continue.
We see the government also stealing from the poor, don't we? We see that the state government in Maharashtra actually raided emergency funds in order to put on a film festival. This was money that could have gone to farmers, soya farmers, paddy farmers, and they took it for a film festival. What kind of example is that in how to treat the poor? Generous?
It is a very bad example, and I agree with you on that. But I think we're talking about people, individuals, corporations, and I think that's really going at a very fast clip today.
All right, Ganesh Natarajan, thank you very much indeed. Luis Miranda, would you give us your top points for the motion, please?
Thank you. By mean, we mean being selfish, not caring, and lacking a sense of responsibility in terms of money, time, and resources. It's not a sin to be rich, but can the rich do more? The World Giving Index, India is number 91, a great improvement from 134, but way behind neighbors like Pakistan and Sri Lanka. Only 10% of giving in India is from individuals and corporates. 75% is the number in the US. 65% of the giving in India comes from governments and 25% come from overseas donors. And overseas donors are cutting down already on aid to India because they say that India is not an underdeveloped nation and NGOs are struggling to raise money to survive. Vaidyanathan of Make-A-Wish Foundation said, "We never get big ticket donations. It's not the rich who give to us, it is the middle class," unquote. I have seen how badly the marginalized poor have also been exploited by the unscrupulous rich businessmen in rural India. Secondly, let's look at religion. India gives a lot to religion, which comprise 60% of the trusts in India. They have low accountability and transparency, and the media is full of reports of mismanaged funds in these trusts. Of course, there are great exceptions like Akshaya Patra Foundation, which again we believe is an exception. Also, a lot of India is given to one's own community. Another sign of meanness because we ignore the needy across India who suffer because of the sins of the exploiting rich. Finally, let's take a look at the role of politicians, celebrities, and the media. Because by rich, we mean those who can influence people, and the politicians, media, and celebrities are a visible sign, part of the rich. I submit that most celebrities are selfish and mean and do not really care for the charities they support. And the media only focuses on the celebrity on page 3 and not on the cause. When recently Farah Khan opened a sale for an NGO that we are involved with called Sneha, and she had to keep reminding the press to focus their questions on Sneha and not on her next movie. And when Ashley Judd came to India for an AIDS awareness program, one of the top 3 Indian stars told her point blank, "I don't have time to spend on this stuff. Just tell me how much money you want. Don't waste my time."
Okay, could you come to a close, please?
Okay, and let's not waste time talking about the meanness of politicians, which India is mean.
All right, Luis Miranda, thank you very much indeed. You talk about the media being full of reports of mismanaged funds, but that doesn't get away from the fact that huge numbers of people are giving, whether those funds are mismanaged or not. You take the Tirupati temple in Andhra Pradesh, 1 year, 1,175 kilograms of gold deposited. Price is, what, $57 million, something like that. A huge amount. In April 2010, 3,000 kilograms of gold. People are giving masses, hand over fist, aren't they? Is this mean India to you?
Sure, sir. If you go back to the World Giving Index, which looks at it in totality...
Yeah, but no, I mean, just answer the question about these huge amounts that may be unregulated, may not be properly recorded. We don't know, but they are huge amounts nonetheless.
The question, we don't know whether, first of all, they've been recorded. I think these have been taken into account when you look at the fact that, as I said, 60% of the money is given to religious reasons, purposes. And all this money goes in over there. The question is there proper transparency and accountability? I don't know. Isn't
that just an excuse for people not to give? This accusation that,
well, they give to religious purposes.
It's not properly managed.
Well, they give, it is, I think, an excuse in many cases because there are organizations like, for example, Dasra, which actually works on getting better transparency into a lot of non-profits. I think a lot of money given by...
But your basic premise is that Indians don't care. And
Yes.
it's clear that they do. You have up to 3 million NGOs in this country.
I'm involved with a lot of NGOs, and I know we're struggling to get money because the fact is that the supply of money for a lot of these NGOs is drying up.
Yeah, but where's it coming from? It's coming from the private sector mostly.
A lot of it is actually coming from overseas donors who are now saying no more.
But in India, it's the private sector that gives most.
Only about 10% of the giving is coming from individuals and corporations in India.
11.7% comes from the private sector. Only 11.6% from central government. 1.5% from state government. So the private sector is doing its bit where the NGOs are concerned.
No, I don't think so. It's not doing it enough, Tim. And the data which I have is actually it's a much smaller percentage. And a lot of the money actually which is given for aid is 65% for the government. Most of it goes for disaster relief. You look at the amount that's coming in from overseas.
My point is the private initiatives, the things that people are doing on their own. Look at Commercial Street in Bangalore. Look at the shopkeepers there who club together once a month and pay for 60 to 70 heart operations for children.
Is that enough?
Would you get that in Western Europe? Would you get that in America? I don't know any shopping centres there that are doing this. Paying for 60 to 70 heart operations for children every month?
And if you look at the total...
This is a huge thing.
True, but if you look at the total number of heart operations that are required, we're a drop in the ocean. We're not saying that they're not doing enough. I think the gap is so large that we need to do a lot more.
All right, Luis Miranda, thank you very much indeed. Roddy Scrivala, would you give us your top points against the motion, please?
Look, I mean, clearly rural India is extremely challenged, and unless we fix rural India, we can't really become a first world country. But let's not link that with a summation that India is mean, because I think it's completely ludicrous. You took the line away from me. We have 3 million NGOs. Now, for everyone to understand here, these are active people. In India, NGOs is not about just philanthropy. It's about actually people getting there and operationally giving their sweat, blood, and toil. So the impact of that is never measured. In the Western world, when you look at philanthropy, it's a very big word. I'm not sure how many of you all actually know that actually 30 to 50% of the money raised sometimes is actually the cost of raising that money, which means that you're having a charity ball, 50% actually goes for the actual charity ball or the dinner or whatever else may be before it actually goes to really a cause. So you can say America and other countries have a 2% of GDP. Question is how much of that is going in there. I question and challenge the fact that if the broad statistics in India is a low, and I think the ranking is 134, which I completely challenge, because the bad thing that we've done is that we've not presented our case properly, and we've not evangelized ourselves properly. But at the end of the day, if we are 4% of GDP giving out to charity in that context, the critical aspect is 3.1% of income from people is going to charity. That's a very important statistics. Now, you add to that sweat, blood, and toil, which in India is very unique because most people in philanthropy do not execute, and you can come up with 2% of GDP, and I would challenge anyone who would say it'd be less than that. The other aspect here is in India, we have massive amount of social entrepreneurship. That's a very unique breed. You don't have too many social entrepreneurs anywhere in the world. Now, what does that mean? People who are going to be entrepreneurs, who want to make a livelihood, who want to earn for profit, but at the same time, they're seeding rural India. So if you put all of these three together, you can see that the actual impact of what we want to do is going to make this a pretty lively debate. Thank you.
All right, Roddy Scrivala, thank you very much indeed. So what was Manmohan Singh talking about 5 years ago when he talked about the vulgarity of the wealth, insulting the poverty of the less privileged? It's socially wasteful and it plants the seeds of resentment in the minds of the have-nots. That's what he said.
I think he was giving a
He wasn't saying how generous India is.
I think he was giving a motivational lecture to urban India to actually donate even more than they're doing in that context. I think that's what he was doing. If I was the Prime Minister,
So you subscribe to those who called it moralizing trivia, do you, from the Prime Minister?
No, I think he was doing his job to actually bring that to epicenter. When anyone's saying...
And nobody listened, did they?
Well, that's a different point altogether, and I don't think that's a benchmark that anyone can go with, because if you're saying that... Well, because when you're talking as the Prime Minister, you have to always talk about the cup that's half empty and challenge people, as much as you have to talk about the cup that's half full.
Well, here's a cup that's very full. Consultants Technova say that the overall luxury market in India is growing at around 40% per annum and stands at $6 billion of wealth. Do you think, in the light of that Manmohan Singh's comments about flaunting a vulgar display of wealth are pretty accurate, aren't they?
Absolutely not. I think if the Western world wasn't wealthy enough...
In a country where half the people live in the gutter?
No, that's not the debate. The debate is actually the fact that the people who can first have to afford it, and you need to have your own standard of living, and then you're going to be able to give. I don't think the Western world started by doing 2% of GDP without necessarily first getting out there and looking at their own spending needs. So there is a consumption pattern.
But India's splurging on itself like never before. You look at the sales of luxury German cars, up 31% year on year. BMW, a whopping 70% up in the current period. period.
You need a feel-good factor to give. I don't think anyone can come in
Feel-good factor? How can you have a feel-good factor when everybody else is in the gutter?
Absolutely. No,
How good do you feel in that car that has cost 2.5 times its original price?
No, you can philosophize of any aspect. I think the key part there is...
It's not philosophizing. We're dealing with very concrete issues.
No, we're not.
People are splurging as never before on themselves, while the gap between rich and poor is getting progressively wider in this country.
1.5 trillion stashed away in banks is not the statistics that any bank has agreed to. So it's, again, the media, self-fulfilling prophecy, started by the media, ended by the media. So I think that's not the basis of it. And I think if anyone has to create
an environment... The basis
of
it was given us by the Bain report on philanthropy, which said, and this is the killer blow, today in India, many of those with hard-earned new wealth are not eager to part with even a small amount of their money.
Not true. 3.1% of income is going to that extent.
Damning, isn't it?
Damning only because we haven't presented our case and we don't market ourselves properly and we don't evangelize. Not necessarily factually correct.
All right, Ronnie Scrivala, thank you very much indeed. We're going to take a break now. When we come back, a leading and rather personal question to the audience. How many of them helped a stranger in the last month, gave them money, time, or something they needed? The answer in a moment. Join us then. Welcome back. During the break, we asked the audience a decidedly personal question. How many of them had helped a stranger in the last month with money, time, or something else they needed? The answers are back. 65% of you said you had helped someone. 35% of you said you hadn't. Doesn't seem, Dwal Sangvi, as if India is as mean as you suggest, does it?
I think the question was, are India's rich mean? And I think if you look at the audience today, I don't think you'll have a 65% of our participation.
They don't look that poor, do they? Are they that poor? They're pretty well dressed, reasonably fed.
I don't think they contribute to 40% of our GDP.
All right, quick reaction, Ganesh.
No, I think, as I mentioned earlier, that most of you have a great heart. You're doing stuff, and I'm sure, based on even this question, you would have thought about it, and that motivates you to contribute more. And I think that's the trend I was talking about. It's going up, and we should be proud of ourselves.
OK, I'm going to throw now the question, the motion, open to the audience. India is mean. We'll take your questions. If you have a question, please put up your hand, and we'll get a microphone to you as soon as possible. Gentleman in the second row, I think you were first, in the black shirt.
This question is for the panel from Mr. Miranda. So what the young people over here need is a platform to help when they know it's accountable. So why isn't CCS or any of your organizations actually providing a platform where we know that, yes, my money, my effort will result in something concrete?
All right, Lewis Miranda.
Sure. There are actually a lot of information available on the web today which was not available in the past. And if you were to just type in CSR, for example, or giving, you get a lot of places where you can go to. One of the organizations I'm involved with is Samita. And we basically are looking at collating all the NGOs that are around over there and sort of basically being the advising companies on how to do effective CSR, and basically putting the two together. So you have places where you can go to on the web.
Corporate social responsibility.
Corporate social, sorry.
OK, let me go back to the question. Do you want to do more than you're doing at the moment?
Definitely.
What's stopping you?
So the point is,
if you can stand up, please.
I don't know where my effort will end up. Like, if I donate the money today, I'm not really sure where it will go. Will it actually help the people? There is no accountability. And for what you're saying, there's no publicity of the effort that there is.
But there's Give India, for instance. This is a well-known portal. The sums there aren't going astray.
There are a lot of portals out here, but the point is suspicion is deep-rooted because we know the politicians...
Ronnie Scrivala, can you help him?
I want to add that I agree with that. The key part here, and we're first talking about, is that everyone's intent is very much there. It needs to get channelized. That's work to be done. We're not sitting here saying we're mean and we have no intent. The intent is there. We've got to channelize that. One, for some people, it's how do I do it? And for a lot of people, it's going to be very soon, how do you measure the impact? You don't want to give it out from that perspective. You want to measure the impact. And I think just to your point, we really need to define what the rich is. We can't say this audience is not, because this represents India from that perspective. You can't take the top 50 people, call them GDP, and then call a 1 billion nation mean because of 50 people.
Dwal Sangvi.
Yes, I mean, I think, first of all, I completely agree with you. I think one of the lacking issues in philanthropy in India today is high net worth individuals are not investing enough in institutions which will allow you to get the trust and comfort level to give effectively, whether it's time or resources. As Mr. Sebastian said, there are excellent organizations, including Dasra, Give India, Samhita, Credibility Alliance, iVolunteers that exist, helping individuals give their resources more effectively. That being said, we do need many, many more institutions if we have 3.3 million NGOs in the country today, and it's the high net worth individuals' responsibility to create these ecosystems, something they typically don't want to do because they want to build a school or hospital in their name, as opposed to leveraging everyone in this room and everyone's intent in our country to do more.
This is your responsibility, isn't it?
Well, just to your statistics, since you brought up education. The statistics says that out of everyone who wants to do philanthropy or help in India, 45% want to do it in education. Well, I've got a first warning signal there for people who think that they've got all the answers. Because without the right infrastructure, if the kids come into school are not healthy, if the toilets are not there, if the water's not there, so it's a 360-degree approach that everyone has to do to that entire thought process. Now, why high net worth individuals have to find it as their accountability to do that, whereas everyone is willing to do that, is a different discussion from what we need to do. So education is one of the elements. It's a disproportionate importance, but at the same time, I think it's a 360-degree approach that everyone has to go through.
OK, all right, we'll take another question. Looking for a lady who's got... You're nursing the microphone there. Do you want to use it?
OK.
Thank
I just want to put up a general question to all of y'all. We, as a foundation, had a project called RAIN.
What kind of foundation?
It's called Reaching Beyond Smiles Foundation. It's a very new NGO which started a year and a half back. And we tried to do a small project called RAIN, which means Reaching All in Need, where we wanted to donate footwear, umbrellas, raincoats for the street children, where are 3.6 million around all over the streets of Mumbai. South Mumbai is known as supposed to be the affluent, industrialist, high network areas.
Tell us what your question is.
People did not pay even $200 to give us new raincoats or umbrellas. They wanted to donate old, worn-out stuff, which were like, would you repair it for us and then you can use it? Where is all this leading to?
Ronnie Scribala. That's pretty mean, isn't it?
So you ring a doorbell and you say, hi, I'm from wherever I am, and I want 200 rupees of your thing. And if they say, well, not right now, I'm doing else or I'm doing something else, we consider that to be mean. Because I don't think that's necessarily the benchmark of giving or taking.
It depends what doorbells they're ringing, doesn't it?
Yes, but
some pretty expensive houses.
She mentioned South Bombay. I think actually North Bombay is, but we're not getting into a debate of which part of India is more affluent or not affluent here in that context. But I would say broadly, yes, I think nobody's suggesting here that we have not a lot to do. I think we're all on the same side when it comes to that. The judgmental call of stating that nobody has an intent to is really what we're trying to understand from here. Because once the intent is there, and we have the roadmap, and then we open the floodgates, a lot will happen.
I disagree with you, sir. I'm sorry, but I think intent is nothing if it's not followed up by action. 60% of our girls drop out of school by the age of 15. In Bihar, in Rajasthan, in UP, you have these same girls getting married, having children at the ages of 16, 17, and 18, and their children are being born prematurely, and they don't have the cognitive abilities in order to sustain themselves in this globalized world. I think that is mean. I don't think we have to sit around and talk about intent anymore. As a country, we need to take action. Liberalization happened 20 years ago, not 10 years ago, not 5 years ago.
For each of these aspects, as you mentioned there's actually government funding that can be deployed. The question is, what you need is training for even the 3 million NGOs. If we can just figure out roadmaps to disseminate the funding, because most of the government funding is there to prevent 50% or even 60% of this impact. So we've got a lot more work to do rather than just getting there and saying some high net worth individuals need to get in there in the middle and figure out how these people and their suffering should be alleviated while they go and buy Audi cars.
So you want the government to do it?
I think the government has already budgeted to do it.
Is it?
The government has budgeted to do it. They have outlays for this.
No, the truth is, the government has the money to do it. The question is, a lot of it gets leaked along the way because of corruption and mismanagement
or
of funds.
Or taken for film festivals.
Or taken to film festivals, absolutely.
And look, we're not sitting here with a brief for the government, but I do want to say the leaked may not be the only word. If there's this much leaked, there's this much unutilized. So how much goes back to the reserve unallocated? Because they haven't figured out a way to deploy it.
So, I work with a couple of NGOs which actually work closely with the government. And the challenge really is, how do you utilize the funds? Because the point is, we're not saying how much money has leaked or gone. The question is, are the poor really getting the benefit of that money? And the answer is no. You look, for example, at some of the great... I mean, what's happened in the last elections, people have realized what sells are populist measures. And the problem is, therefore, you have more of these pork barrel schemes over here where money gets siphoned off and it finally doesn't get to the poor. And that's why when he talked also about the rich, to me, the rich also includes the politicians and people who are in position to influence this. And they are mean.
But I would urge you that instead of asking for their money, if you ask for their intelligence and their time, and to get them to actually execute and not worry about...
Ronnie, I asked.
Okay,
the fact is, I don't get it.
That's fine. That's fine. But
maybe I asked wrong.
But so it's not to do with their wealth. It's to do with their intelligence. Because today what we need in India is minds and execution skills. Money will be there.
Why not a little less corruption as well along the way? So that less than 50% of the grain that's allocated for the poor could actually...
I think we all know
that could actually make it.
I think we all know that the food produced in this world is enough to feed everybody, and it's a distribution problem. Therefore,
but less than 50% of emergency grain supplies allocated to the poor actually reach the poor in this country. Whose fault is that? The mean politicians are creaming it off?
No, I don't
selling
think
it? No, selling it on the black market?
40% of that 50% is rotting. So it's really a distribution problem. It's an execution problem. And yes, we're not sitting here and
as a result of the fact that not enough people care. That the government simply doesn't care. Doesn't care to crack down on corruption, doesn't care to do proper distribution.
It's easy to say that. I think they have to be held accountable.
The results are there.
But they need to be held accountable. And I think we need middle India...
You keep voting them in. They're not being held accountable, are they?
Well, then we can't call the rich as voting them in, because the rich is the minorities everyone just give us in statistics. If that's such a narrow statistics, we couldn't be voting anybody in. So it's obviously the people that is voting them in and then tolerating their unacceptability, not holding them accountable. It's accountability. It's not being mean. They don't know how to execute.
Yeah, if I may add one point, and I think it goes back, Louis, to your point. I mean, everybody needs a platform. Just to give you an example, when the government created a platform for industry to participate in skills development, I mean, all of you have heard of the ITIs, which were completely moribund facilities. But today, 40% of the ITIs are jointly run by the private sector and the government, and it's making a difference. Your point on RAIN, I would suggest you go into Young Indians, okay, which is a group of very young people like you, doing work with CII, doing that. India at 75, which is run by a young lady called Bhairavi Jani, who's from Mumbai. These are people who can help you to find a platform. And I think it goes back to Ronnie's point, that if you knock on a door and say, I need this, somebody will tell you, hey, I'm already doing stuff.
Okay.
But if you have a platform, I think you'll get a better
Louis Miranda.
You know, we talked about the politicians. I think it's a very valid point. What do we do about that? There's an organization called PRS, which basically looks at legislation in India and what the MPs are doing in parliament, what effectiveness, etc. is. And that organization is starving for money. Who are the two biggest donors for them? Overseas donors. Where's that money stuck? It's stuck because they haven't got the approvals from the regulators to bring the money in. So it's starving for cash. Now, that's a role where India, corporate India, and Indians like us, if you're interested, should be giving money because it helps in transparency, makes you know whether your particular member of parliament is actually attending parliament. Is he making a noise over there? Is he arguing it out? And that organization is starving because rich India is not giving money.
Okay, all right. I'm going to take another question. Gentleman in the second row.
The question is to Ronnie. My concern is really the inequality and the growth of that. I mean, if you look at post-independence India, the 5% growth in GDP, the quality of that growth was much better than the 8 and 9% growth of GDP that India has logged in for the last few years. The second question that worries me is the oblivion portion of Indian rich people in the eco-environment that they look at. If you look at the lifestyles of Ratan Tata or Narayan Murthy, and you look at the lifestyle of some of the other billionaires who live today, you will see what I'm talking about. They're much more sensitive, not about the wealth that they have, but what they're creating. Dasra has a giving circle, which we try and raise money. Each ticket size is 1 million rupees. You'd be amazed by the number of people that we have approached who refuse to give even that 1 million rupees. And it's not for a want of a platform. It's not for the want of us not knowing them. It is just a question of not wanting to loosen the purse.
All right, Ronnie Scrivala.
Well, look, I mean, I think it's the question of intent versus that. And so I do agree with you that when you're looking at an entire perspective of saying, are they or are they not, and you worry about the rich and poor divide. But that's a different debate. That's a different discussion. We're really talking about whether you're rich or poor, are we sensitive to our environment? Are we sensitive to our rural environment? Are we sensitive to giving to balance that part?
Are you sensitive to the growing gap between rich and poor?
Yes, but, well, first, normally what happens in logic, whether we like it or not, is a gap happens, then you acknowledge the gap, and then you do something to fix about it. You can't start preventing a gap that wasn't there in the first place. So we're not debating here.
Everybody knows it's there.
Everyone knows that for the last 65 years, that gap may have widened. I think that's not all bad news, because at the end of the day, you're building resources that can flow back. The concern that you have is saying some billionaires have a lifestyle X and some billionaires have a lifestyle. We'll narrow it down to 100, 200 people, and my fear is...
It's not bad news that the gap is getting wider.
No, because of the simple reason that let's look at it from a cup that's half full. If you don't have the resources,
so
what are you going to give?
half of your population is splurging on BMWs, and you've got 2.1 million children who are dying of malnutrition before the age of 5.
It's nice to have a flogging horse for BMWs and Audi and Mercedes, but we're not running a commercial for them.
No, we're not. On the contrary.
No, exactly. But I
on
think
the
here...
We're using it to explain the huge and growing disparity in India.
And I'm saying human psychology is you first need to have before you can give. And I think we're trying to preempt and get all worried about the other aspect. This doesn't mean that everyone's got a clean chit from that perspective. It is the fact that we can't narrow it down and define the rich. I have a serious problem in the definition of how we define rich here. It's too narrow a conduit. We're talking about 200, 300, 400 million Indians can afford to give. Why are we narrowing it down to the instance and narrowing down to 50, 70,
Deval
80
Sangvi
people?
is shaking his head at you.
Because the debate is about the rich. And the debate are about those individuals who are buying the BMWs and the Audis and so on. And they're not saying, and I'm not saying they shouldn't do that. I'm not saying they shouldn't do it, but as Amit Mukherjee said and others said, they shouldn't do that and simultaneously tell us they don't have $1 million rupees to give to help adolescent girls in these states.
I think
when they come to me and tell me that there's an economic global downturn sitting in offices which are extremely corporate, making the salaries that they do, and then telling us, oh, there's an economic downturn, we can't afford giving this year, whether it's $1 million rupee ticket size or a 200 rupee ticket size. That's what's wrong, and that's where intent does not turn into action. That's been a frustration for us from 13 years when we started this organization, and still is a frustration for us and society today.
Okay. Why are we narrowing it down?
All right, lady right at the top. Yes, you, please.
Everyone here talked of the number of NGOs that are increasing, India, 7 million NGOs every year or whatever.
700 a day.
Yeah. So even I opened up one such NGO last year, but I have not done even a single activity on. And I would admit this, that on after opening NGOs, we use the name of the NGO to do musical concerts which are corporate in nature. How does that help?
Well, it doesn't, does it, Luis Miranda?
One of the challenges, I think, of the fact that there are 700 NGOs, I think we've got too many NGOs happening. And if people just work together, and instead of everyone saying, I'm going to set up my own institution, you will have economies of scale. You'll be able to put resources together. And that's why when I quit working 2 years back, everyone said, are you going to set up an NGO? I said, no, because there are enough of NGOs around the place, people who are doing passionate work. Is the question
right? They're not being used for the purpose for which they were set up. They're being used for corporate gigs.
I think they're not being used for the purpose set up because they're not effective. You can't have a lot of these 3 million or whatever number, 700 we set up a day, a lot of them will die out. They'll be part of the living dead because they're not going to be sustainable.
Well, look, I think firstly, thank you for being so frank and this thing forthright. And I think that's what young India is about. We've got a very forthright generation out there that's wanting to do and is wanting to be frank about that. Sure. And I think the second part I would like to say that is, yes, in 3 million, we're not going to find that. The challenge is about consolidation, and we're on the same side. There's a lot to be done where consolidation will improve impact.
Yep.
And that is not under debate today, so I'm not necessarily going to give a point of view on that.
OK, gentleman in the red shirt.
So my question is to you, Mr. Screwala and Mr. Ganesh. My concern is not how people are giving. My concern is that where people are giving. Do you suggest that we should give in our own regional community, the corporates that help their own regional community by giving their charity, the politicians, help their own community come up? Do you mean that's charity, that's giving? Don't I say that they're giving in a mean matter, or they are giving in a mean way, they are charity in a mean way?
See, I really don't think you should try to stratify at all. I mean, if you can make somebody's life a little better, let me finish. Don't look at which community he comes from, which part of the country. If you find your maidservant's son is deserving of charity, by all means give it, because you can see the impact, as somebody said. But if you have a lot more money and you want to maybe make a difference to a large community, give it anywhere. But don't constrain yourself by saying, I shall only give to X or Y, because the opportunities to give, and I mean, what Ronnie said in terms of bottomless pit, are huge. And any little you give, irrespective of whether you feel rich or not, is absolutely amazing, and you should do it.
Luis Miranda, come in.
I just want to sort of refer to a note which actually you guys sent to some of us, which said that the poorest states with weak economic management are neglected. And we don't give it because they're not part of our community. And the South Asian Network for Social and Agricultural Development comments that this amounts to punishing the poor for the failures of their rulers. They will get poorer and poorer because we're not connected with them. And that's unfortunately one of the things. So it's easier to give to somebody who we know, we can trust, it's true. But I think we've got to get over this credibility gap. Because the argument that we don't trust enough, therefore we don't give, I think is nonsense.
It just goes round and round in circles.
Yes.
OK, all right, let's take some questions for this side of the House, for those who are supporting the motion. All right, lady in the front row.
There is a college in Bombay, St. Xavier's College. I think we can change India if everybody decides to do something about it. I'll just give you a small example.
Well, you're never going to get that, are you?
We will. I really don't agree with you, Sebastian. What Xavier's has done is they have insisted that before you get your certificate, you have to give X number of hours of social service before you are given your certificate. Now, what is the impact that has had? I met the kids. They grumbled like crazy in the beginning, and now 10% of them have decided to enter the social sector permanently. Their experience was so inspiring that they decided that I don't want to go into corporate India, I want to go into the social sector.
You agree that this is a rich college that Zarina's talking about?
Okay, we should point out that the lady speaking is your wife, actually. So I want Deval Sangvi. No, please, Deval Sangvi, do you want to just react to that briefly? Excuse me, Deval Sangvi.
Sure. No, again, I don't think. I mean, I think it's great that we have a young audience. I think that we all have a lot of hope.
This is enforced generosity. You think that's good? I mean, you're for that, aren't you?
I think it's great that we're talking about young India. I think to put the burden of our poverty on young India is wrong. I think individuals I meet who have the capital and the business acumen to change India like they have in the past 10, 15 years in corporate India, that same acumen and capital needs to come to those who don't have it. And it's not just the burden of young India to carry, it's the burden of all of India.
Okay, Ganesh Natarajan.
No,
nobody's saying no.
I'd just like to make a point here. It is not an either-or situation. I mean, if somebody doesn't have time, they cut a big check, sure. If somebody has time and said that, look, I can't do these big corporate giving kind of programs, but I want to give my time, as you rightly said, I think it's amazing. So I think we should celebrate each one's contribution and not say you do this and you do that.
Okay, gentleman in the front row there. Yeah, right at the end.
Yeah, this is to Dhaval, actually. My personal conviction is that giving is a mindset, and that's not linked to your income. There are rich and poor who will give 50, 60% of their income, even if they're getting 2 square meals. And I think the issue is, like you mentioned, should we burden just the youngsters with the burden of poverty? Why do you need to burden just the rich with the burden of the poverty? I think there are enough people who want to make a difference, and there should be consensus building among the professionals in this field to create a platform. For instance, Wikipedia can get $10 million from nerds who are just clicking away on their screen. Why can't we come together with so many NGOs to create something engaging?
Deval Sangvi.
These platforms exist. Again, Give India, Samiti, and others exist. I don't think
they are not engaging enough at all.
Well, are they? Some of the initiatives for Give India are not doing well.
So Give India, for example, still give 30 to 40 crores. And these are individuals who are giving between 1,000 to 2,000 rupees a year.
But by your own admission, 30, 40 crores is nothing. I mean, I think you've been talking about that all this time, that it is really nothing. It's a drop in the ocean.
And to those outside the country, 30 to 40 crores is what?
It's about $4, $5, $6 million.
$6 million?
$6 million.
So I think it goes back to his point that maybe the platform that Give India has created needs to be accentuated to make more people contribute to that. A lot of us don't give through Give India. It doesn't mean we're mean.
No, and this is exactly, I think, the issue. There's an uptick. I completely agree with you, sir. That uptick has been felt, and it's phenomenal. That uptick could only have happened in giving because of the wealth that Mr. Screwvala says has been created over the last 20 years. I think the issue we have now is, are we doing it fast enough? Are we doing it as impactful? And are we bringing in as many people as needed to, in essence, move more people out of poverty than ever done in human history?
But I think,
and
Deva,
that's
as we've
the
agreed,
question.
mobilizing resources and getting execution. 50% of India's youth. What's wrong with actually mobilizing them? What's wrong in putting the burden on the youth also? Not only, as absolutely Ganesh said, it's not an either-or situation.
Because most of the HNIs that I've come across say either.
All right, okay, gentleman right at the back.
I'm supporting the team on the right-hand side. So I have a question.
Those who are against the motion.
Yeah, with them. So I believe that, as you talked about, Mr. Tim, you said something about luxury goods. I feel it proud if my country is having 500 Ferraris, Audis, BMWs are coming in my street. If I can see them close to my side, it makes me feel proud. So why are you accounting on the people getting the cars? That is actually an asset for a country. So what would you like to speak on luxury goods?
I'm ashamed.
Since I don't have a view here.
I'm ashamed that 1,000 people die every single day, children, because they're not being fed appropriately. So while you're being proud, I'm feeling ashamed. I'm ashamed about the quality of education for 600,000 children in our BMC schools. I'm ashamed about the number of women that are not being paid the equal salaries in rural India as the men, even though they work harder, but get paid 40 to 50% less.
But is he not ashamed? I think he's ashamed too. So then we're all in the same boat.
Well, he can speak for himself, actually. We're going to go back to him to ask him.
Every coin has two sides. Everything in this world has two sides, good side and a bad side. If you look from development, it's there. And the company, the car, that also counts a lot. The development and the company, both are together.
Louis Miranda.
Conspicuous consumption is not totally wrong. Let's put it this way. If everyone was told you can't, it's like becoming an advertorial for BMW and etc. But if people are told you can't own that car, then people are just going to move overseas. We need to allow people to spend the way they can. But let's go back to what Gandhi said. Gandhi never said being rich is bad. He said you hold this money in trust for society. And therefore, are people doing enough? There's nothing wrong in having fancy cars.
If I can just make one point, Louis.
Sure.
I mean, the worst thing that can happen is we do a throwback to the 60s and 70s.
Exactly, yes.
And we say everybody is poor and we're so happy.
Yeah.
We need rich
Are we
people,
better?
we need role models,
Are we
and we
better
need
off as
more
a country?
competition.
We're not better off as a country. So what are we talking about?
All right. On that note, ladies and gentlemen, we are now going to vote on the motion that India is mean. If you want to vote for that motion, that is the side represented by those on my right, you're going to need to press button 1. If you want to vote against it, that's the side represented by those on my left, it's button 2. Whichever button you want to press, please do it now. All right, ladies and gentlemen, the audience has spoken. The verdict is in. 64% of you say India is mean. 36% say it isn't. The motion has been resoundingly carried. Let me just look at how you voted before the debate. Before, it was 61% who said India is mean, and argued 39% said it isn't. So there has been a 3% swing towards those who support the motion. Quick reaction.
No, I think it's fabulous. But again, I think we all need to take responsibility. We all need to do more, and we need to move ourselves out of poverty faster.
Ronnie Scrivali, you were so convinced you'd won.
You see, the point here is it's not about winning or losing. I think we're all...
Well, it was a moment ago. It was a moment ago.
It was a moment ago, and I think thank you, because what we're talking about here is it's a wake-up call for all of us. If we believe that it is, I think the good part here is if we acknowledge it, we're going to do something about it. So thank you for actually saying we are mean, because now let's do something about it.
All right. All I have to do now is to thank you, our distinguished panelists. Thank you to your audience, our audience here in the studio and around the world. Do keep in touch with us via our website, www.theoutsider.tv. Till the next time, from the Indian city of Mumbai, good night.